This is a video for my ASP.NET class project. This is my website for Eastside Theater Company, and I'm going to be showing where I've used application variables, session variables, some cookies, login pages, master pages, validation controls, as well as a database middle tier class, which has a few methods written for validation and reading data from the database that's connected to this project. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is the hit counter down here. That's using an application variable, which I'll show in the code in Visual Studio in a bit. One of the new pages I've added is an admin tools page. It requires the staff member that is using this website to log in. And so when I click here, it's not going to take me to the admin tools page. It's actually going to redirect me to this login page. As you can see, this page is using a master page it inherits from. And I'll show that also in the code, but each page is going to have this as the header, and then a column here on the left and a column here on the right, which contains most of the main content. Each of these fields has validation controls on them, so if I don't put anything in, each field is going to show what is required of each field. Something that's unique to the password field is that if the passwords don't match, it's going to tell me that the passwords don't match. So I'm going to go ahead and log someone in so I can show how this works. This is one of my users that is in the connected database, and when I log them in, it takes them to the admin tools page. This is a session variable that I'm using to customize this page. It passed from the login page to this page. First page that I want to show you that is new off of this one is the View Company Contact List. This requires the user to log in because it contains sensitive information such as addresses and phone numbers. This is using a SQL data source which is bound to a grid view. The grid view is what you can see, and the SQL data source info is displayed in the grid view. And I've styled it to match the style of my website and the theme, which is the blue and the white. Another page that I've added, which uses customization through some session variables and cookies, is where the staff member can view what their past shows are. Right now, this user, Tanya, has only been part of one show, but in the future, this list will grow as she progresses in the company. This is using the database middle tier object and a method inside that class, which I will show in a minute. The last thing that I want to draw your attention to before I show you some of the code is that there's a log out button. When I click on this log out button, I have redirected the user to the home page. It's going to clear all the cookies and the customization with her name and uh, anywhere that's using her staff ID to gather information, such as here, which is using her staff ID to get just the shows that she has been in. So when I click log out, it takes me back here, and it's not customized with her name, and it's as if she isn't logged in. So I'm going to show you my master page. The master page has the typical things that you see on each page. So the navigation bar shows up on each page, and then the page header that had the colorful lights in it, then my left column and right column. And the main stuff goes on in the code behind page with a little bit of C#. I've set 3 properties right here that let me customize the page with a page title, left subheader titles, and right subheader titles. And it also has the logout button click event, which clears all the cookies and the session variables and redirects here. It directs the user back to the main page. The next thing I want to show you is the login page. This is where I've used some ASP controls, and you can see that each one has validator controls connected to them. So this required field validator is connected to this txt staff ID text box, and it shows the control to validate is that text box, and each one has a similar required field or a regular expression validator such that I've used on the email. The real work in this login page happens in the code behind page. So I, at the top, instantiate my middle tier, and then I call a method called validate staff from the middle tier, which I'll show in a minute. But it takes the staff ID, first name, and password and checks to see if they're valid in the database, and if they are not, it shows the user an error and they need to log in with credentials that are in the database. And if it is successful, it saves and preserves all their information in session variables, and then it redirects them back to the start page, which would be the page that prompted them to log in the first place. And in my case, it's the admin tools page. So this is the admin tools page that I was just referring to, and most of the work actually goes on behind it too. This is where I want to show how I've customized each of the pages that inherits from the master page. I've set their properties, so like the page title, I've set it to administrative tools menu, and that will appear in the page header where the lights were. And I've also passed some information to this page with a session variable. It's going to be customized with their first name. It's going to say hello, and in my case it was Tanya. And then I've also customized the right subheader to say pick a tool. When you click on the admin tools page link on the website, when you go up here and click here, the event that runs is the page load, and it's checking to see if the staff ID session variable has been set, and if it's equal to 0, that means they haven't logged in, so the code here is redirecting them to log in before they can access this admin tools page. This page right here is the client or the contact list, and I've used a SQL data source here to query all the information for the contact list, and I connect it to the etc connection, which connects to my database in SQL Server. And then this SQL data source is bound to this grid view to show each staff member's contact info. The next page that I showed you was the page that shows what each show a staff member has participated in. This page is pretty straightforward. It just uses a span, and then the real work, again, happens in the code behind page. I, again, use a database middle tier object. I instantiate that here, and I customize the page here. And then I've written a method inside of this code behind page that is writing all of the data from a method. This method here is written in the database middle tier. It fires this method and writes it all into a table that appears in the right column through some inner HTML, and it makes use of a SQL data source, which I've also instantiated up here just so it's more global. And it puts all the information using a parameter which I gathered at login, their staff ID, and it puts all that information into a table in that right column. The last thing I want to draw your attention to is this middle tier. In the constructor, I have set a connection string which points to the database that is in SQL Server that holds all the information for validation, to log in, and all the performance info, show info, staff info. So the method that I showed you earlier to return the booking info, this one was not used actually. I mean, return the staff info. This method was used to return which shows the staff member has worked on. So I'm using connected architecture here and returning a SQL data reader that we cycled through in the code behind page. And I have used a stored procedure, that's the command type, and then it takes their staff ID and searches through all the shows to see which ones they've been a part of. and then executes that reader, and then it is later displayed in the staff show page as I showed you. And then the other method that I used in this project is the validate staff, and it takes the staff ID, first name, and password at the login and puts it into the parameters of stored procedure, and it returns a return value that will tell the page whether they were validated and if they're logged in or not. And then at the very end, because I'm using connected architecture, at the end of this one, I close the connection. That's about it for this project. And that's all.